want you to imagine something with me for a moment. Picture a man standing in the middle of a crowded room, people all around him, voices rising and falling like waves, hands reaching, questions flying, expectations pulling at him from every direction. Yet he stands there, still, not frozen, not uncertain, still, because he knows who he is, what he stands for, and what he will and will not allow. There is something magnetic about a man who holds his own space without apology. People feel it before he speaks, they register it before he makes a single move, because true confidence isn't loud, it's contained. Boundaries are the quiet architecture of that containment. And here's the truth most men never hear. Respect isn't earned by force or fear. Respect rises when your boundaries rise with you. I've spent my life walking into rooms where power dynamics swirl like storms, interrogation rooms, high-pressure negotiations, chaotic scenes where people reveal who they truly are beneath the heat of conflict. And in all those moments, one principle holds steady. A man without boundaries becomes a man without gravity. He floats into whatever others want from him, whichever direction the wind blows, whichever emotion dominates the room. But boundaries, they anchor you, they give your presence weight, and people feel it. So let's walk through something essential today. 7 boundaries that, when held with strength and calm conviction, will cause others to not only respect you, but recalibrate how they treat you, not through intimidation, not through aggression, but through the quiet dignity of a man who knows himself. Each boundary is a doorway, not to keep the world out, but to keep your integrity in. Let's begin. 1. The boundary of your time. Time is the currency of your life, and most men spend it like loose change, scattered, unprotected, tossed toward anyone who asks. But let me tell you, when you start guarding your time, people begin guarding their approach. Time reveals what you truly value, and when you give it to everyone, you value nothing. Too many men say yes out of habit, fear, or guilt. Yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll show up. Yes, I'll handle it. They stretch themselves thin until they stop feeling stretched at all. It becomes their normal. But endurance is not the same as strength. Strength is the ability to say, I can't, my time is already committed. Or even better, I choose not to. Try saying that once in a while, without explanation, without apology. Watch how the room shifts, because a man who values his time signals something rare. He values his life. 2. The boundary of emotional responsibility. Here is one of the most misunderstood boundaries men ignore. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotional storms. Their anger is not your burden. Their disappointment is not your guilt. Their insecurity is not your assignment. So many men bend themselves into emotional pretzels trying to keep the peace, trying to keep everyone comfortable, trying to avoid being the target of someone else's eruption. But when you allow others to dictate your emotional weather, you lose the climate of your own mind. You can be compassionate without being controlled, empathetic without being entangled, present without becoming someone's emotional landfill. And here's the irony. When you stop trying to manage everyone else's moods, people start managing their own. 3. The boundary of respectful communication. I've seen men tolerate tones, words, and attitudes that chip away at their dignity one small piece at a time. They tell themselves, it's not a big deal, or I don't want to escalate it, or that's just how they talk. But every time you allow disrespect, subtle or sharp, you train people to treat you at that level. Communication isn't just about what's said, it's about what's allowed. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to intimidate. You don't need to assert dominance. No, that's insecurity wearing a mask. All you need is calm clarity. I don't speak to you that way, and I won't be spoken to that way. Simple, direct, unemotional. People don't respect men who bark. They respect men who hold the line. 4. The boundary of physical and mental space. Men carry an invisible weight, the belief that they must constantly be available, reachable, accessible. But solitude isn't selfishness. Solitude is maintenance. Every man needs a place where the world fades and his thoughts return to him. A corner of a room, a daily walk, a drive at night, a quiet cup of coffee in the early morning hours before the world wakes. When you claim space for your mind and body, even in small pockets, you reclaim your inner equilibrium. Tell the people around you, this time is mine, this space is mine, this moment is not up for negotiation, and mean it. Space isn't distance, space is oxygen. Without it, even the strongest flame goes out. The boundary of self-respect. This is the boundary that sits beneath every other. The way you treat yourself becomes the instruction manual for how the world treats you. If you abandon your own needs, why shouldn't others? If you dismiss your own feelings, why would anyone honor them? If you belittle your own worth, why would anyone elevate it? Respect starts internally and radiates outward. It's in the way you speak about yourself, the way you carry yourself, the way you feed your body, tend to your mind, protect your peace. Self-respect isn't arrogance. It's alignment. It says, I honor the man I'm becoming and I will not betray him. People can feel that kind of integrity. It shows in how you move, how you choose, how you respond. They may not always agree with your boundaries, but they will respect the man who consistently holds them. 6. The boundary of purpose. There's a moment in every man's life where he looks around and realizes he's been pulled into 20 different directions, none of them truly his. Other people's dreams, other people's expectations, other people's urgencies, but there is something powerful, almost sacred, about a man who knows the path he walks. A man aligned with purpose becomes difficult to manipulate, difficult to distract, difficult to derail. When you say, this is what I'm building, this is what I'm pursuing, this is what I refuse to compromise, you send a signal that cannot be ignored. Purpose gives your boundaries backbone, and when you protect your purpose protects you. Purpose gives your boundaries backbone, and when you protect your purpose protects you. But there is one more boundary, one many men avoid because it demands the most courage, the most honesty, the most inner discipline. Let's talk about it. 7. The boundary of what you will not tolerate. Every man has a threshold, whether he admits it or not, a point where something inside him whispers, enough. But here's the problem. Most men hear that whisper long after they should have shouted it. You see, life teaches you in patterns. It presents the same lessons again and again until you stop participating in the behaviors that harm you. And the moment a man draws the line, not in anger, not in panic, but in clarity, everything shifts. Because there is a quiet, powerful truth. The world treats you according to what you tolerate, not what you hope for, not what you intend, not what you explain, what you tolerate. This boundary isn't about punishment, it's about preservation. It isn't about control, it's about calibration. And it's not about telling others what to do, it's about showing them what you'll no longer accept. Sometimes that means ending a friendship that's been eroding your spirit, one sarcastic jab at a time. Sometimes it means walking away from someone who loves you only when it's convenient for them. Sometimes it means saying no to a boss, a partner, even a family member, because they've become accustomed to your compliance. A man becomes powerful the moment he decides his soul is not up for negotiation. Now, something shifts inside you when you claim this boundary. Your voice steadies, your decisions sharpen, your presence deepens. It's as if your internal compass clicks back into its true north. And people feel it, they may resist it, but they respect it. They may not celebrate it, but they recognize it. They may test it, but they learn quickly you don't move your line to make others comfortable. And that right there is the essence of masculine self-respect. But boundaries don't work alone. Let me tell you something men rarely think about. Boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are architecture. Walls are rigid, defensive, isolating. Architecture is intentional, structured, elegant. It's designed to support the weight of who you are becoming. Boundaries are not meant to push people out of your life. They are meant to elevate the quality of the people who remain. When you hold your boundaries, you filter out chaos. You filter out disrespect. You filter out manipulation. You filter out the noise that distracts you from your mission. What's left? People who value your time. People who honor your presence. People who see you as a man, not a tool. People who rise to meet the standards you set quietly, consistently, without arrogance. Boundaries refine your circle the way fire refines metal, by revealing what's real and burning away what never was. The psychology behind respect. Now let me take you a little deeper, beneath behaviors, beneath actions, beneath attitudes, because boundaries are not merely social rules, they are psychological signals. When you set a boundary, you communicate 3 things. I know who I am, I know what I deserve, I am not afraid to enforce it. People instinctively respect clarity. They may not always like it, but they trust it. A man without boundaries is unpredictable. He bends, he breaks, he collapses under pressure, he sacrifices himself in the name of being a good guy, and then wonders why he feels resentment boiling beneath his ribs. But a man with boundaries, he becomes reliable, not just to others, but to himself. When you know you'll stand up for yourself, you start walking differently in the world. Your shoulders drop, your breathing slows, your steps become deliberate, your words carry more weight because they come from a place of inner alignment instead of insecurity. People sense that. People respond to that. People adjust to that. Human beings recalibrate themselves around a man who is internally anchored. When you hold boundaries, you change relationships. Let me tell you a story. Not dramatic, not cinematic, but real. There was a man I once trained. Strong, intelligent, capable. But he lived his life trying to be everything to everyone. He thought self-sacrifice made him noble. He thought overextending himself made him valuable. He thought enduring disrespect made him strong. He didn't understand the difference between endurance and erosion. One day I asked him a question, simple, but it cut right through him. Whose life are you living, yours or the one others expect from you? He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the floor, breathing slow, processing the truth he'd avoided for years. When he finally looked up, he said something I've never forgotten. I think I became the man they needed, and lost the man I needed. And that's what boundaries protect. They protect the man you need to be. When he started setting boundaries, everything changed. Some people drifted away, some became uncomfortable, some tested him, pushed back, tried to pull him into old patterns. But those who remained, they met him with more respect, more honesty, more responsibility. People always rise or fall to the standards you enforce. Boundaries and masculine energy. There is a myth that boundaries make men rigid, cold, distant. But let me tell you something I've seen in every room I've walked into. A man with boundaries is not hard. A man with boundaries is disciplined. There is a difference. Hardness is brittle. It breaks under pressure. Discipline is flexible. It bends without folding. Hardness is defensive. Discipline is intentional. Hardness is fear disguised as strength. Discipline is strength, refined by clarity. Masculine energy isn't about dominating anyone. It's about mastering yourself so deeply that no one can destabilize you. Boundaries are simply the shape that mastery takes, the life that awaits a man with boundaries. Here's what you'll notice as you begin holding these 7 boundaries. Conversations become cleaner. Relationships become healthier. Decisions become easier. Stress becomes lighter. Your inner world becomes quieter. Your confidence becomes deeper. You stop chasing validation. You stop over-explaining. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop giving discounts on a life you've paid full price to live. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, you rise not above others, but above your former self. You rise not loudly, not aggressively, but with the steady calm of a man who finally realizes he does not need permission to exist on his own terms. And this rise creates a ripple, subtle, invisible at first, but unmistakable in its effect. Because when a man establishes boundaries, he doesn't just change how others treat him, he changes how he treats himself. Let's go deeper into that transformation. Most men live life slightly off-center, like a compass needle near a magnet, pulled by forces they never consciously acknowledge. Approval, guilt, fear of conflict, fear of disappointing others, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being alone. And these small distortions create big consequences. They bend you away from who you're meant to be. But boundaries realign you. When you say no to something that drains you, you realign. When you refuse disrespect, you realign. When you claim solitude without apology, you realign. When you walk away from someone comfortable but unhealthy, you realign. It's like tightening the strings on a musical instrument. You can play the notes either way, but only when aligned do you produce something beautiful. A boundary is simply a tuning fork for your character. That's why you feel lighter when you enforce a boundary. Why you breathe easier, why your mind clears, why your posture changes. You're not just protecting yourself, you're becoming yourself. There's a misconception that boundaries push people away, but the truth is the opposite. Boundaries make love deeper, cleaner, truer. When you don't have boundaries, you love from a place of fear. Fear of losing someone, fear of being rejected, fear of not being enough. That kind of love exhausts you. You overgive, you over-explain, you overextend, you shrink your needs, you hide your feelings, you tolerate imbalance. And what happens? Love becomes a performance instead of a connection. But when you have boundaries, your love comes from strength instead of fear. You no longer love to be chosen. You love because you choose. You no longer sacrifice your well-being. You share it with others. You no longer seek validation. You offer truth. Boundaries make you a better partner because they make you a more grounded human being. You listen without losing yourself. You care without collapsing. You connect without clinging. You give without giving yourself away. A man without boundaries dissolves in love. A man with boundaries deepens in love because he knows how to stand, even while holding someone close. Every man carries an energy, sometimes loud, sometimes quiet, but always perceptible. The energy of a man with boundaries is unmistakable. He doesn't rush. He doesn't chase. He doesn't beg. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't justify. He doesn't compete for respect. He commands it by presence alone. People sense a steadiness in him, a groundedness, a calm that cannot be faked. He is no longer reactive. He responds, not out of impulse but out of intention. He pauses before he speaks. He observes before he moves. He chooses rather than drifts. And that energy changes how people talk to him, how they approach him, how they perceive him. You hear it in their tone. You see it in their posture. You feel it in the space between you, because boundaries are not something you announce. They are something you embody, and others intuitively adjust to the signal you send. Not everyone can travel with you as you grow. Not everyone can respect the man you're becoming. Not everyone benefits from your evolution. When you begin enforcing boundaries, some people will resist because your lack of boundaries benefited them. Some will question because they were accustomed to the older, softer, more compliant version of you. Some will accuse you of changing because you finally stopped carrying what was never yours to carry. But others, they will rise. They will meet your standards. They will reciprocate your respect. They will match your effort. They will value your time. They will honor your presence. Boundaries don't shrink your circle. They refine it. The wrong people fall away. The right people step forward. And you're left with a life built on alignment, not obligation. One of the greatest fears men have is disappointing people. Friends, family, partners, co-workers, society. But here's a truth. Most men never confront. You cannot live your life and their expectations at the same time. To protect your peace, you will disappoint someone. To honor your time, you will disappoint someone. To follow your purpose, you will disappoint someone. To set a boundary, you will disappoint someone. But hear me carefully. Disappointing others is not a failure. Disappointing yourself is. When you fear disappointing people, you become a chameleon, shifting your colors, adjusting your tone, bending your truth. But when you accept that disappointment is part of self-respect, you become a man of integrity, consistent, steady, grounded. Others may not always like it, but they learn to respect it, because even if they resist your boundary, they trust the man who has the courage to hold it. A boundary without enforcement is a wish, a hope, a fantasy. People don't honor what you say. They honor what you do. You can say you won't tolerate disrespect, but if you stay silent when it happens, they see the truth. You can say you value your time, but if you drop everything whenever someone asks, they see the truth. You can say you need space, but if you abandon that space the moment someone calls, they see the truth. Boundaries require consistency, repetition, reinforcement. You don't have to yell, you don't have to threaten, you don't have to justify, you simply have to follow through. When someone crosses your line, you respond with calm certainty. That doesn't work for me, this won't continue. Here's what happens next. Simple, clear, steady. The moment you enforce the boundary is the moment the world learns you are serious. Each time you hold a boundary, something inside you strengthens. Your voice becomes clearer. Your posture becomes taller. Your decisions become cleaner. Your standards become higher. Your spirit becomes calmer. You begin to feel like a man you trust, a man you can rely on, a man you would follow if he were someone else. That is the quiet reward of boundaries. The internal evolution no one else sees, but everyone eventually feels, and that evolution, that transformation, is what we'll explore next. That evolution, that transformation is what truly defines a man, not the muscle, not the money, not the image he projects or the armor he wears, but the inner sovereignty, the quiet kingdom inside him that no one else governs. Boundaries are the walls of that kingdom. Values are the foundation. Purpose is the throne. And the man himself, calm, steady, self-possessed, is the one who decides what enters and what leaves. Let's step deeper into what happens when you start living from this kingdom. There's a moment every man experiences when he finally enforces a boundary he has avoided for years. A moment where he steps out of the old version of himself and feels silence, not emptiness. Silence. A stillness that feels like standing inside his own spine again. Before boundaries, the mind is noisy. What will they think? Maybe I should have explained more. Did I do something wrong? I don't want them to be upset. Should I have just let it go? But with boundaries comes a clarity that quiets the mind, because you already know your answer. You already know what you won't allow. You already know where you stand. There's no internal debate, no back and forth, no emotional tug of war, just a calm inner voice saying, yes, that was right. This is who I am now. We don't go backward. That silence becomes addictive, not because it feels powerful, but because it feels peaceful, and peace is the ultimate proof of self-respect. There is a heavy exhaustion carried by men who lack boundaries, an exhaustion that settles in the bones, in the back, in the breath. It's the exhaustion of being everything for everyone, of saying yes when your body screamed no, of showing up for people who wouldn't cross the street for you, of giving energy to situations that drained you dry, of solving problems that weren't yours to solve, of being the emotional container for people who never asked how you were doing. But the moment you set boundaries, that weight begins to lift. You stop carrying guilt that isn't yours. You stop carrying other people's anger. You stop carrying their expectations. You stop carrying their dependency. You stop carrying the burden of being the reliable one, the strong one, the one who always fixes everything. You return the load to where it belongs, not out of coldness, but out of truth, and suddenly your shoulders feel lighter. Your steps feel easier. Your breath feels deeper. Many men don't need a new life. They just need boundaries, strong enough to let the old weights fall away. At first, boundaries feel like actions, but soon they become identity. The man who once hesitated to speak up begins speaking with calm certainty. The man who once avoided conflict begins handling it with clarity and composure. The man who once felt invisible begins walking with the presence of someone who sees himself. You start to notice these shifts. You no longer apologize for taking up space. You no longer justify your decisions. You no longer fear being misunderstood. You no longer contort yourself to keep someone comfortable. You no longer shrink to maintain harmony. This is identity reconstruction. Not through force, but through alignment. You become the man who defends his peace. You become the man who honors his time. You become the man who demands respect through behavior, not bravado. You become the man who knows his worth without announcing it. Boundaries don't create a new you. They reveal the real you the world never got to see. People respond differently to a man with boundaries, because boundaries communicate truth without words. A man who respects himself changes the atmosphere of a room. Others instinctively adjust. Their tone becomes calmer, their words become more thoughtful, their approach becomes more deliberate, their requests become more respectful, not because you threatened anything, not because you demanded anything, but because your energy communicates. I am not someone you handle carelessly. This is not dominance. It's not intimidation. It's not superiority. It's simply emotional clarity. Human beings understand boundaries on a primal level. We read them the moment we meet someone, how they stand, how they speak, how they hold eye contact, how they treat themselves. You don't need to announce your standards. You just need to embody them. People can feel the difference. The moment you stop leaking energy through conflict, people-pleasing, and emotional caretaking, you redirect that energy toward your mission. Boundaryless men are distracted men, scattered men, drained men, but men with boundaries become laser-focused. A boundary is not a restriction, it's a protection of the direction your life is meant to go. You begin to wake up earlier, you begin to think clearer, you begin to choose more deliberately, you begin to move with intention instead of impulse, you begin to prune your environment of anything that doesn't serve your purpose. Purpose thrives where boundaries exist. Purpose withers where boundaries dissolve. And when your purpose strengthens, your life aligns, you become harder to derail, harder to manipulate, harder to distract. You protect your time like a craftsman protects his tools. You protect your attention like a warrior protects his sword. You protect your mental clarity like a king protects his crown, because you finally understand your purpose is sacred, and boundaries are the walls that guard it. One of the most transformative shifts that happens when you hold boundaries is this. You stop over-explaining. You stop saying, "Here's why." You stop